see. Sophia, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sofia Fernandez-Garcia. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited to share about the pieces that are in the show and about the project that they are a part of. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, and I recently graduated from the University of Colorado at Denver this last May. I graduated with my BFA in photography, and the work that I'm sharing about today was part of my BFA thesis project. My project is titled Darle Vuelta a la Tortilla, and it consists of a series of corn husk transfer prints that I made using imagery depicting authentic Mexican gastronomy. The project explores the ways in which food builds a relationship to culture and how it acts as a channel to form identities. My work often explores the ways in which food works as an identity marker. I really like to investigate how food is incorporated into rituals of preparation and meaning. I'm really interested in how food preparation within a culture is a form of tradition itself and how it's passed down through family generations. These traditions create memorable moments, and over time they can create a meaning, an understanding, or even a realignment of our perception of the home or of the self. I think something as simple as a corn husk can spark a chain of memories to someone who grew up eating their grandmother's tamales. And I try to explore the ways in which food creates a cultural, ethnic, religious, and a social sense of community and identity. For myself, growing up in a bicultural home in the United States meant growing up with different identities. I personally have struggled with my cultural identity most of my life, as labels are quickly introduced into a conversation when I explain my family's background. My mother is from Mexico, my father is from Spain, and I was born and raised here in the US. In addition to that, I grew up going to a small Catholic elementary and middle school where my classmates and my teachers often labeled me as distinctly Mexican. And I believe that's due to the fact that I was only one of 2 Latino students there. Later, as I entered a larger and a more diverse high school, I was no longer seen as Mexican, but instead was introduced to the label of whitewashed. And whenever I visit my family in Mexico City, I often hear the label of gringa. And in most circumstances here in the US, I am not American enough when identifying as a second generation Latino woman. So throughout my life, I have felt that my cultural identity has fluctuated a lot depending on the people I was with, as they attempted to categorize me and fit me into one of the commonplace ethnic ranks, which ultimately never truly represented my background. The title of this project comes from a Spanish idiom. Darle vuelta a la tortilla means to reverse the meaning of something or to turn the tables on someone. Usually this is in the context of someone trying to benefit from the alteration of the meaning. And the literal translation of that phrase means to flip the tortilla. I chose this as my title for the project because it reminds me of my interaction with others and their persistence to categorize me and switch my culture and reality in an instance. If you want to go through the images, I think that would be fine. It's just like, not just the ones from the show, but a couple different ones too. However, through all this turmoil of identity confusion, I have found food and ingredient combinations to be a source of comfort and realignment. I have used the gastronomy behind the meals I grew up with as an affirmation to my cultural upbringing. Learning to prepare Mexican and Spanish foods at home, using family recipes straight from my grandmother and my mother, and sharing meals with my family has built a strong tie of identity and community for me. Something I wanted to investigate through this project is the idea that finding one's identity through food really depends on the authenticity of the meal. I believe someone seeing cuisine that is misrepresented of its gastronomical background really skews other people's perception of that culture. Misrepresentation in the portrayal of food in the media, specifically here in the US, it creates harmful stereotypes. And I often feel that my cultural identity is almost irrelevant to US culture. Mexican cuisine has become one of the most common ethnic cuisines in the US, and globalization has allowed for Mexican food to be industrialized and altered to fit into the fast food industry regimens. The Mexican cuisine that's represented in the US is often not authentic and has led to the misrepresentation of an entire culture. The most prominent and important element in this project is the corn husk. The corn is the base of Mexico's gastronomy as it plays into social, cultural, and economic factors, as well as being used in various ways in its cuisine. I was also really intrigued when I was doing this project and learning that wheat was introduced into Mexican gastronomy sort of as a tool of colonization. Traditional Mesoamerican cuisine is heavily based on corn, chiles, and herbs, and it wasn't until the Spanish conquest that wheat was incorporated into Mexico's cuisine. The political leaders of the time claimed that corn was inferior to wheat, and the only way to fully Europeanize Mexico was to replace corn with wheat. However, the result was not one cuisine replacing another, but instead a fusion of ingredients and flavors. Most of the imagery presented in this project includes nopales, corn, tortillas, molinillos, chocolate, molcajetes, and pico de gallo. These ingredients and cooking tools make up the base of many Mexican meals. And some of the ingredients are originally found in Mexican agriculture, while others are through that introduction of the Spanish conquest. And today, most of these ingredients make up a significant part of Mexico's national cuisine. As I was working through the conceptual themes of this project, I had originally intended it to be presented as a series of lumen prints and cyanotypes, but the work later evolved when a classmate had suggested to me that I reverse the process, and instead of having food being placed onto a photographic material, having the photos placed onto food. So through a lot of trial and error, I ended up going with a wood transfer technique. And the way that I did this process was by first printing the images onto regular printer paper. And then later, I painted corn husks with a matte medium gel extender, and I simply transferred the image onto the corn husk. I had to prepare the corn husk itself by soaking it in water and vinegar for a couple days at a time, just to get all the fibers kind of relaxed. And then I would flat iron the corn husk to try to get as many wrinkles as it could out. And a lot of the time, this process is so tedious and it's so delicate that I would have to scrap so many corn husks, but that was the process that I used. And I thought it was kind of cool to make a connection between using the corn husks as paper, because the corn husks are kind of acting like the backbone of this project, just as alternatively, it kind of acts as the backbone to many Mexican national dishes. And the images on the corn husks present various aspects of Mexican cuisine. This work was produced with the intention to spark ideas and conversations related to cultural identity and stereotypes presented through food preparation and presentation. And that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to present this work to you. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I was wondering if you, I don't know how to say this. We were just so charmed and so fascinated by your use of corn husk instead of paper. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are about the sort of very delicate and fragile nature, like sending them out into the world to be put on other people's walls.
Yeah, well, you guys were the first gallery to accept this work, so I was really nervous and like packaging it and like sending it. I wasn't really sure the best way to do that, but I don't know. I think there's also a beauty in knowing that these corn husks aren't going to last forever, and it's okay that they're delicate, and it's okay if they break or if they tear or if they start to crumble away, because I think that's just such a big part of just the work itself and having an actual food item representing the cuisine itself.
Yeah, it adds just a fascinating dimension to it too. And they're just wonderful to have in the gallery, along with, more traditionally framed things. And, of course, all the images, all, a whole bunch of stuff, but it's really great.
Thank you.
So
I have a question.
Mhm.
Have you heard, Sophia, have you heard of, I'm not even sure I'm going to pronounce this right, anthotypes or anthrotypes? I belong to the Facebook alt photo list, and these people take negatives, sandwich them with growing plants, and leave them in the sun. And I thought, maybe as an idea for the future, I don't know, an extension, or maybe it doesn't fit your concept, this is your choice, but wouldn't it be cool to have portraits of people who cook things, grow the things that you cook, all the stuff, all the ingredients, literally and figuratively, in your, the cultural aspects of food, and do portraits of them literally on green growing corn husks, and so that the sun literally causes chlorophyll where there is sun and none where there isn't, and you get an image. This might be an amazing next step, where you don't you bring the people back to the corn, if, as it were. What do you
Yeah,
think?
absolutely. I love that idea. I actually had a professor offer up that process as an idea. I never actually followed through with it, but something that we had talked a lot about was how to bring people into this project, because I only have 2 images with people actually in the series. So yeah, I really love that idea of a way to get like people incorporated back into the
And
process.
you'd be working with living corn too, instead of the husk. You wouldn't have to do any pre-treatment, and it literally would be growing as you're making the image. It usually take, I think, 3 days of exposure to get any kind of image, which you could keep. But just very exciting, very interesting, and I love this because I love to travel. When I was a fashion photographer, I was all over Europe, and one of the things I adored was, I always said there are 2 things that teach you about a society: the humor and the food. If you can get the humor and you understand the food, you've got an insight. Now, you don't have it, but you have an insight to the society because of the traditions of the food, preparation, ingredients, and humor. Because humor is so subtle and so culturally based that if you can tell a joke or get a joke, you're beginning to understand it. But the food is so important. I love what you've done with that. That's great.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. But first I want to say that was a great presentation. It was so cool to go through your process, and it was really well done. So congratulations on that. And I know you just graduated. So were you able, is this how you had to present it for your thesis?
No, we were lucky enough, since things were kind of starting to calm down, we were able to have our art actually presented in the gallery. The only difference is that the oral defense was virtual, like it is right now.
Yeah.
But I was really grateful that we actually had a gallery space to do this.
And are you going to keep making them?
I think so. I think I'd like to explore a little bit more. Like I mentioned before, probably exploring ways to bring people more into the imagery as well. But yeah, I don't think this project is totally finished yet.
Yeah, really, really solid. So congratulations. I'll mute myself.
We have a question from Peggy in the chat. Did you use pigment inks to print on printmaking paper?
No, I used a laser printer. For some reason, laser printers transfer a lot better, and it's just normal printer paper, like nothing fancy. This process was, it's pretty simple. It's just like the tedious part comes in like scraping off layers of the paper off the corn husks, but everything else is pretty basic, which is great.